In the study of symbolic architecture, duality operates as the primordial antonym. It is an ontological state of strategic tension. Two distinct forces collide, maintaining their boundaries to produce immense, visible friction. This specific friction is the non-negotiable prerequisite for the manifestation of reality. Resistance generates the exact kinetic energy necessary to drive creation forward. We can identify the specific nature of these opposing forces. On one side, we find the chthonic heat of opposition and physical vitality. On the other, the ethereal cool of contemplation and the higher mind. Without the active, resistant friction between these two forces, a system remains completely static. It lacks the energy required to force the dialectic of the two to manifest into a unified tertiary reality. This abstract diagram maps the sacred calculus that governs this movement from conflict to unity. A plus B equals C. Variable A and variable B begin as two distinct, isolated signifiers. They are locked in productive friction, refusing to blend. The exact moment of forceful collision forcibly transmutes that contradiction into completion. The resulting variable C is the unified signified. It stands separate from its parent variables, marking the exact genesis point of newness. This identical geometric calculus governs structural architecture, the etymology of language, the boundaries of mathematics, and the mythological lineages of the gods. By mapping this isomorphism across these disciplines, we expose the exact mechanical process that generates both organizational and existential renewal. Metaphysical principles inevitably demand a physical vessel to achieve stability and impact. We see this first in structural geometry. We begin with pillar A, rendered in blue. It stands for the higher mind and intellectual foundation. Opposite stands pillar B, rendered in red, representing chthonic heat and physical energy. Between these vertically isolated supports exists a liminal, empty void. Moving past this isolation requires chromatic alchemy. The structural vectors extend upward and inward, merging lunar blue and solar red to create purple. This chromatic merge aligns with structural geometry, locking the vectors into a load-bearing purple arch. It serves as variable C, the universal hue of sovereignty and the geometric middle way. This arch proves unity increases load-bearing power. It transforms an empty void into a functional gateway, without sacrificing the strength of the individual pillars. We can move from the stone of structural architecture into the linguistic crucible of the spoken word. This typographic layout breaks down the etymological equation of creation. Linguistic input A is the noun. We isolate the prefix no, functioning as the static subject and necessary marker of established identity. Linguistic input B is the verb. The suffix viv represents kinetic action and the active force of becoming. Synthesizing the static identity and kinetic action yields the root word nov, the Latin foundation for new. Innovation is essentially a witnessed change. It requires the noun to provide the observer and context, while the verb provides the kinetic force of transformation. Without this specific interdependence of identity and action, the root of the new remains incomplete. Change stays invisible without a subject to witness it, and the subject stays frozen without a force to enact it. Numerical symbolism defines the outer limits of any synthesized system's evolution. The number 9 acts as the terminal threshold. It is the absolute limit and zenith of a cycle before it must ascend or reset entirely. This visualization advances the linguistic root of the new, nov, by adding the letter M. The M functions as a terminal boundary, representing measurement and maturity. The addition of M finalizes the cycle, resulting in novum, the number 9. This mathematically marks the definitive end of the becoming process. As the system reaches maximum expansion at interval 9, it faces structural instability. Without containment, the system has no path forward except to reset. This terminal boundary creates the logical requirement for a central point of balance. The system must develop a sovereign fulcrum to maintain its integrity, or face inevitable collapse. We define this necessary systemic fulcrum not as a point of passive rest, but as a locus of strategic equilibrium and active authority. The cryptographic visual blueprint of the sovereignty is found in the lowercase string IVI. The two vertical I components operate as the dual pillars of existence. They are the noun and the verb, the red and the blue, standing in their necessary opposition. The central V represents the vow, an oath of balance, functioning as a fulcrum. It acts as a magnetic valley, actively pulling the two I pillars inward and upward. Through this structural transformation, the IVI configuration locks rigidly together to form the capital letter M. This resulting M is the sigil of the monarch. It combines the measurement of the cycle with the majesty of control. Sovereignty is defined by this exact geometry. It is the precise capacity to hold opposing chthonic and ethereal forces in permanent, productive tension. Ancient mythological trinities provide a blood and spirit reflection of this same structural calculus. We identify the archetype of Osiris as representing kingly order. He embodies the static structure of the heavens and serves as the established noun. We place the archetype of Isis in opposition. She represents maternal wisdom, the kinetic force of creation, and functions as the active verb. The biological synthesis of these two lineages yields Horus. Horus is the living keystone of the mythological arch. He is the divine embodiment of the number 9. Horus stands as the definitive narrative proof of a successful synthesis. He is the sovereign one who reconciles the dialectic struggle of his predecessors to anchor a new world order. We have tracked a single trajectory from the physical stone of the architectural arch to the breath of the spoken word, through the numerical boundary of 9 and into the myth of the gods. This progression from the friction of dual forces to a single unified state provides a consistent blueprint for how systems evolve from isolation to maturity. Any true systemic renewal relies entirely on the precise geometric mastery of this strategic tension.